welcome everyone. This is our first lot of Q&As. So today we've got about 10 or so questions to go through. So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, so how things are going, Jim? All good?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. Active on the training field today. Build up to the FA Cup on Saturday. So we've got a full week of preparation, which will hold us in good stead.
Cool. Who are you playing again?
We're playing Colchester.
Okay, quite a tricky one then.
Yeah, we played them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll know enough about us and we'll know enough about them. So it'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah. Well, you have a history of being good in the FA Cup. So
we have in recent years. Yeah, we certainly have. I hope that continues.
Yes, likewise. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the first question that we have is my daughter has moved up into 11-a-side goals.
Mm-hmm.
What should she do to adjust?
Well, this is essentially about distances. The goals are bigger, the area is bigger. And the best way I've found to deal with this, if you have the facility to do so, basically put the old goal area on top of the new goal area. So if you can mark it out with cones or discs or whatever it may be, if you've got a sort of temporary line paint, you could draw the dimensions on the floor. And then if you can also put the old goal inside the new goal, and then you instantly got a comparison, and you can start to understand the new dimensions, the new distances you'll have to travel, the new area of the goal that you'll have to cover. And then after that, I would use cones again or line paint, temporary line paint to mark out the specific positions that she would now or he would have to take up. And another method I've used is I've pinned a piece of rope from the middle of the goal and then led that out to the ball, and you can change that rope constantly. And essentially you're looking for that rope to travel between the feet of the goalkeeper, and you can just do repetitive practices of being off that line or that rope and working towards it and understanding those new dimensions. So that was, I suppose, the most effective way I found. I also would encourage during warm-ups to use the goal area to just get the body ready. So whether it be, little sprints over the 6 yards, sprints over 4 yards, which is half the goal distance, working between the posts, touching the crossbar, all those kind of things can help for the goalkeepers to get the geography of the new area that they're working in.
Yeah, good, sound advice. So the next question we have is best ways to get better at diving and how to train by yourself.
I think if you would have seen in some of the videos that we've put out there, that my philosophy on this is that you work backwards. So you start by laying on the floor in the position that you would intend to land. If you've got a sound landing technique and it's comfortable, it's not always going to be comfortable when you dive, because you're going to have to occasionally make dives that are really sort of recovery dives, last ditch attempts, that sort of thing. But in an ideal world, you can get a good shape of attack on a dive, and that you can use parts of your body to land correctly. So if you get used to those points making contact with the floor, get into the position that is comfortable to land, and basically rock up. So you'll be on your side essentially. So you're looking, say if we're on our right, we're looking for the right shoulder, the right forearm, right hip, and then the outside of the right knee to be sort of contact points. And you're looking to try and rock up. And you do that just to get used to those points being in contact. And then you go onto your knees and work from on your knees, diving down. So replicate the step as it's such with your right foot, with the knee. So just slide the knee forward at an angle, and then just drop down to the floor. And the key things you're looking for in that landing is that the knee that is, I suppose, the bottom knee, if you like, is out in front of you with the foot underneath the other leg, and that you've got your arms free. So you could, if you've got the ball in your hand, you can essentially, as if you were taking a throw in, but lying on your side so that your elbow's not trapped underneath you. Not the easiest thing to explain in a Q&A, and I would urge to get a better sort of picture of that, to have a look at the diving things that we've put out.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I presume also that's useful then for muscle memory and muscle training and strength training.
Absolutely.
You're
And
using them,
essentially,
yeah,
yeah,
different
that's what we're
muscles.
working towards with all the sort of technique stuff, is that, you know, we train the body to have, you know, certain skills, and we set ourselves up. I think this is an important point, as you're mentioning it, is that we're looking for the most efficient, effective way to deal with the football. But the brain and the body can do funny things at times, and there's so many variables involved when it comes to competitive games that, you know, we set the body up in the best start position to deal with whatever comes, and then we hope that muscle memory kicks in and works. But that's not always the case.
Yeah. Next question is, what are the best types of gloves to get?
The best types of gloves to get are the ones that you are most comfortable with. I'm a big, a little bit of a critic, I suppose, of you know, getting the most expensive gloves, and because they wear through so quickly, that it's a kind of false economy. And does the value, does the cost of that glove, does that equate to adding value to you as a goalkeeper? I'm not sure it does, and I really discourage any goalkeepers from applying a kind of confidence related thing to a particular pair of gloves. I think that if you're putting your trust in something that really has very little effect on your performance, then you're going to end up having problems. And what happens if you make a mistake with this pair of gloves? Then we change them again and change them again and change them again. So in terms of, you know, relating performance to the gloves, try and distract. Obviously, we want the ones that's going to give you the most confidence and the most belief. So I would say you've got to have one that's comfortable. And I suppose that, well, there's obviously the different cuts, so which one you prefer, different wrist straps, and the size as well. You know, some goalkeepers prefer a slightly looser fit, some like a quite a tight fit. So just play around with those, the cuts and the sizes, and then, you know, go with the ones that help you to catch the football. I know that sounds very obvious, but it is as simple as that.
It's probably worth saying, isn't it? So yeah. So next question: what drills can help against a knuckleball shots? Knuckleball shots.
So my understanding of knuckleball shots are those shots that kind of move and wobble in the air.
Roberto,
I'm not a physicist, and I'm not aerodynamics are not my thing. But I was taught about this when Nike got the contract to supply the Premier League with the footballs. I was on a goalkeeping camp where they tested some of those footballs, and we got to speak to the designers and find out bits and pieces. And essentially, I think with the knuckleball, the first thing is to identify that it is a knuckleball. And the way to identify that is that there'll be no spin on the football.
Okay.
So, you know, as a ball spins, the side of the football that is going against the flow of air. So in this case, if this is a football traveling forward, the top, it will build up pressure, because the air on this side or the ball is going against the airflow. So it builds up pressure, and that's why you can see the curve of a football, and then the spin on the ball will tell you what's going to happen. With a knuckleball, the ball is hit right in the sweet spot, and there'll be no spin on the ball whatsoever. And then what happens then is the ball goes out of shape. And so when it's out of shape, the forces, the wind flowing over that ball, push it in different directions. Obviously, gravity being an influence as well. So what happens is, as the pace on the football decreases, the powers from the side increase. So the closer the ball gets to you, the more it is likely to move. Now, so one, identifying it, no spin on the football. And the second thing, and this is, it really is as simple as this. It's very easy to see that the knuckleball and go backwards and think, oh, I need more time. You've got to go and attack the ball. You can't come back away from it or dive backwards thinking, oh, I'll get a bit more time to read the pace on this ball. No, you've got to go and get to it as quickly as possible. So diving forward, attacking forward. As soon as you, from a psychological point of view, step away, that's when you're going to get the problems. And ultimately, they're not easy to deal with.
No.
And sometimes you're going to, come unstuck. But to give yourself the best chance, you have to be attacking the ball.
Yeah. Cool. So how do you get more comfortable diving?
Similar to what I said previously, in that it's crucial that you learn how to land. Once you are comfortable landing, you will then have the confidence to dive bigger, dive further, dive more often, and with a stronger technique. You'll find, I think all coaches have worked with goalkeepers who maybe have learned in their back garden or taught themselves, they're stronger one way than the other. And you can see that their technique might be really poor to one side. And it's probably because they've landed badly, and so they've adjusted themselves to make it more comfortable. So if you can learn the specific, say, contact points of how to land, it becomes very comfortable.
Yeah.
Just a point on that, Graham. I've seen a bit of conversation about using crash mats. If I think there is a place for them, but I'm always cautious of using them because it can encourage a landing technique that's not. It's a bit of a false sense of security. If you're working on hard floors or really hard grass pitches, then I can understand that. And it might be that they're looking at a takeoff technique, so they want a high repetition takeoff technique without the potential for injury on the landing. I can see that, but be careful. How often my advice would be careful, because you can get goalkeepers all of a sudden they go from landing on a nice soft mat to landing on a hard floor and coming unstuck.
Yeah, wise. So next question is, how do I best train my 12-year-old son outside goalkeeping training sessions? I've been encouraging him to catch at all times unless at full stretch. Speaking as a father of a 12-year-old, it's difficult. Yeah,
it is difficult. I think there's so many variables when it comes to this, and I see quite a few things on social media where they say you should always do this and never do that, and this always happens. Well, no, it doesn't. It's not always like that, and I try to avoid that sort of terminology, because there are so many things that can happen that you can't put a hard and fast rule on it. And so I'll go back to what I said about setting ourselves up in the correct position on the pitch, correct body position to deal with the ball. And then we hope that muscle memory, our instinct, our experience kicks in, and we choose the right action. Now, and confidence can come into that. So even with senior goalkeepers, you see, that if they're in a little bit of dip in confidence, then we say go back to basics. So just keep the ball out. So it might be that they start maybe parrying things that if they're really high in confidence, they'll try and catch. So with regard, putting those hard and fast rules on, avoid that. And what I would say is put your son or daughter in situations where they can learn which technique to use and when to use it. So obviously do your technical practices. This is how you catch. This is the start position. This is where your hands should be. This is how you parry. So make sure that their set position is good, and then just put them in loads of experiences, loads of situations and scenarios where you can, create situations where they learn. Can they catch that? Should they catch it? Should they try and catch it? Do I parry it? Do I tip it over the bar? Do I parry it back the way it's come, or do I deflect it wide? All of those things, and that's part of my belief as a coach with goalkeeping is there's not a lot really learned from talking too much. I think you get your points across. This is what we're trying to achieve. Let's go and do it, and then we start to look at, this is what happened there. This is what we're going to try and do next time to improve. So, almost contradicting myself for talking too much. Just say, make sure the set position's right, and go out and put on situations where they can practice making those decisions.
Yeah. Cool. The next one is how to get better at covering your near posts. So quite a specific question, this one.
Mm-hmm. It's quite often spoken about, isn't it? It's the famous one, the near post. What's interesting is, strikers are often taught to kick across the goalkeeper, so if they save it, it ends up being dropped into the middle of the goal. what we've tried to do as goalkeepers is to try and cover as much of the goal as we possibly can, with a sort of equal chance of covering left and right, if you like.
Yeah.
So firstly, I'd eliminate calling it the near post. And so, for example, I've done a video on this on the pitch, but I'll try and describe it. So if you're on the angle, your position on the angle to face a shot, if you take a line from the football to the far post, you stand in your correct position, so say an inch or two in front of the near post. That line from the ball to the far post is, imagine that's now your goal. Yeah. Now, if that goal is square onto the football, there is no near post. So just protect the space. Say, people are going to score. It's always the way. If someone's close enough and hits it hard enough, they're going to score at your near post.
Yeah.
It's a fallacy. It's a myth, and it's something that will affect goalkeepers' mentality. Oh, get close to the near post. Well, you'll put it in the other side then, because you've left a big gap there.
Yeah.
So I would say that the mentality of that is prehistoric, and change the way you're thinking, change your setup. And again, we'll put that video out where I'll illustrate that on the pitch to show it's not something to be concerned about.
I mean, speaking as a somewhat layman in terms of goalkeeping, it sounds like it's all about options, isn't it? So it's kind of making sure you as a goalkeeper has as many options as possible. So you've learned to dive properly and both left and right, and then you're reducing the options of the attacker by position. Yeah, so you eliminate the near post.
Reducing the options, but also you want to give yourself the options. So say crosses, for example, if we stand on our line for a deep cross, we're decreasing our chances of going to get that. If we stand too high, we're increasing the chances of being exposed and the ball but going in directly. So that it's just finding that percentages, putting ourselves in positions where we can cover as much of what's needed to cover as possible.
Yeah, good question. And kind of goes back to some other points. And how do you look after a goalkeeper's knees?
Learn techniques. Get your techniques right. If you get your techniques right, then there won't be a problem. Like I said previously, you're not always going to be using the perfect technique, and there will be times when you're going to come off second best. So get your techniques right. And if you are working on particularly hard surfaces or playing on hard surfaces, then get the right protection. Get there's plenty of gear out there in all sorts of websites and shops that can offer you protection on the knees. But if you're finding that you seem to be getting a high repetition of injuries on the knees, I would either have a look at the training. You're not doing too much high repetition, getting high repetition injuries, and the surfaces you're training on. Be careful.
Good. So how to take goal kicks properly? get your defender to do it. No.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yes.
Goal kicks. Well, it would depend on the age groups, but so if we was to work on say a 12-year-old again, it'd say that there's so many elements to it that are required: strength, specifically core strength, technique. And what you find is that because of the need to kick the ball as far as possible, there's the general kind of approach is, right, just put the ball down and go and kick it as hard as you can. It's kind of counterproductive, because the technique's not going to develop, and you will probably find that you'll be kicking like that for the rest of your career. So I would urge goalkeepers to start with distances, shorter distances, and the techniques that are needed for shorter passes. So it could be that you just start by passing with the inside of the foot, short passes to slightly longer, and it's a really good way to start with kicking with the instep, because if you try and kick with the instep to your maximum, you have to be approaching the ball, so you have to have momentum, and that's what you also need for goal kicks. I would then progress that to kicking off the laces, but it would literally be kicking the ball probably 10 yards into a net, hanging a coat on or a bag on the net, and just trying to drive the ball into that, and doing that consistently with minimal effort. And that's the key. Your technique, your momentum into the ball, you follow through. if you get all those right, and you can do over and over and over again, and you then step back, and it might be you now try and drive it into the crossbar. But say, avoid going flat out and trying to smash the ball, because one of the things that, well, again, you won't develop a decent technique, and then you won't develop the abilities that I suppose modern goalkeepers need, which is a huge range of passing.
Yeah, distribution, isn't it? It's not like it was in the 80s and the 90s, is it, in that way?
No,
so,
they are expecting you to switch play, be able to lift it over people. And, you know, if you want to go and play for Man City and replace Edison, you've got to be able to drive the ball 70, 80 yards to feet. So you're not going to do that by going out and just smashing the ball as hard as you can. You need a technique. Start with shorter distances, momentum and technique, develop. And then you can start, when you mature, you start adding that little bit extra power. Because what you find when you start to add power and pace and aggression, the technique slips off, because you're trying really hard, so your muscles tense up, your timing changes, so you lose that accuracy. So just stay with the technique and just add a little bit of power as you go along.
Yeah, cool. And finally, so how do you strengthen a goalkeeper's wrists?
Well, that is something I'm going to abstain from talking about, because we have a sports science department that would know a great deal more than me. In my day, I can remember, and I'm not recommending these, I'm just going to tell you some stories. There we used to have tennis balls. Just squeeze tennis balls. You can get the grip machines, but generally speaking, the one thing that in my day was kind of, I suppose it's beneficial, was just catching loads of footballs. Lots of handling practices, to develop those techniques, so set positions. And if you're catching footballs, 100 footballs a day, then your wrists and your forearms become very strong.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks for that. So what we're going to do, we'll put some things on our social, just to request more Q&As for next time.
Okay.
And yeah, brilliant.
Good stuff, bud. Like that.